This is a full book review of LUO GUANZHONG's The Romance of the Three Kingdoms. Let us get this started with right now. Now, LUO GUANZHONG's The Romance of the Three Kingdoms itself, it's not exactly a timeless masterpiece. Its values, its Confucian kind of values, its Taoist values, that kind of stuff, it still resonates with the Chinese to this day. So much so that we have a bunch, like they have a bunch of statues about that related to this period and the Warring States period and a bunch of other periods too. And in the places, it's a historical monument, it's a historical site, and everything about this screams awesome and a very big cultural influence on the Chinese too. So much so that has been adapted into several TV shows, several movies, several dramas, and even a few video games that are even older than me, like Dynasty Warriors and the more recent Total War: Three Kingdoms. I have yet to play either of those, so I don't really plan on playing any of those anytime soon. I'm too busy. But my thoughts and my 2 cents on the Romance of the Three Kingdoms is, well, I guess suppose 3 cents because Three Kingdoms, is that it's an incredible story. It's not just a story, it's also a legend. And in the legend itself, we go ahead and learn the true unification. Long divided must unite, long united must divide. And must this never-ending cyclical cycle keep going on? And if you think about it, it kind of still is. That is kind of the way that happened today. Now, obviously, it doesn't always fracture into three. In fact, the Three Kingdoms period actually originally started with 50 different kingdoms of China, and until like they went ahead and got reunited into like these 3 big kingdoms. I probably shouldn't call them 50 kingdoms, but it just feels right calling them 50 kingdoms because they were all 50 different separate autonomous regions that were ruled by each of their warlords, all under the rule of the Han Dynasty Emperor. But at that point, the Han Dynasty's Emperor's rule is more or less like, I'm just gonna order you guys whatever my master, aka I'm his puppet, to do, and yeah. I don't really have any power, but he does. Whoever controls me does. Now, who does control the Emperor is basically like owning the cheat code towards a game like in Maintain Cosmic Destruction. You could go ahead and write the cheat code upgrade, or you could go ahead and write health and power, and basically you could just do anything. It's like owning that cheat code. Or you can just go to developer tools and just edit everything with very limited admin tools. So you're not God. You're not God yet. At least towards some legends, some people call Zhuge Liang something similar to a god, and he does have at least once pretended to be a god. But before I go into a long, full ranting about all this, I will have to go ahead and talk to you guys about long divided. Now, our nations ourselves are long divided themselves. One person goes ahead and gets into this ideal, they go ahead and they divide. Just because 2 people cannot agree on how they should deal with stuff. And once they go ahead and proceed to divide like that, they have to go ahead and proceed how they will deal with stuff like this again. But of course, people long divided must long unite. Let me give you an example. In the world, not every nation has been divided or like united. Some have only done it at least once. But I can guarantee you, any nation has a history of where they were divided. Let me take Germany for example. This is during the Cold War, and you know what happens to Germany during the Cold War. There's East Germany and West Germany. I should probably reverse the colors for this one. West Germany itself was like the capitalist kind of industrial and economically back. Like they had a better economy than East Germany, and so East Germany themselves were Soviet backed, and they were mostly communist, and as a result there was not much freedom of expression and those kind of stuff. And so as a result, they went ahead and had this divide. This is a long divided. But after several decades of this, the people were sick of it, and long divided must now long unite. It's not one gave way to another, they both became united. In fact, Chinese culture themselves have went ahead and kept thinking about this concept for an extremely long time. If you know any basic your basic Chinese knowledge, you will know that the Chinese have this idea of yin and yang, where they're like, you have a yin and we have a yang. This has always been the case for the rest of eternity. Once you're able to go ahead and get yourself into these 2 kind of stuff, once you can accept both sides of yourself, that is when you will know that you have succeeded in life, and you can go become a Taoist in the sky. Now, this all seems like a bunch of BS, in my opinion. It's like a bunch of Lao Tzu BS, but in the end, that is true. Once you can go ahead and accept both sides, and most people actually don't go into terms with this, you can go ahead and reunify a person, a country, a nation, whatever. Let me give you a few other examples too. Any kind of country you can kind of think of has had some sort of divide. Like Britain themselves had the church divide back in the Middle Ages when there were the Catholics and the Protestants. Spoiler alert for those of you who don't know your history, but the Protestants have won, and now there's the Church of England. Albeit there's still Catholicism inside there. They have now united back again. Well, Europe as a continent itself was divided heavily too. Back in, I'm not just talking about World War II. I'm just talking about pretty much any kind of period of history. This period of history we are in right now is probably the least divided part. The least divided part of Europe. Europeans themselves have never always been on the friendliest terms of each other, but whenever they find a good common enemy, they will always fight them with each other. And when they don't, they go ahead and proceed to fight themselves and have all this infighting and stuff like that. The Americans themselves, they were all very, very long united, but then like invaders came in, basically colonists from the old world, and then they got divided. And to this day, you could argue that they are kind of still divided if you compare them to their historical counterparts. But then technically, you could also just say that they're united in a way that other nations and other continents can't really say. The Mexicans and the United States have a very special kind of relationship, and United States and Canada relationships are very they're better than the other relationships with the other parts of the world. And I'm treading on like a very soft ground here. Like I'm treading on like hard ground here, so I'm just gonna be like a little careful when I talk about all this. Then we have the Americans, aka the United States of Americans, having their Civil War, where they were long united. And they weren't even long united. They were basically barely 100 years old. I'm pretty sure the people who were alive when the country was founded is still alive at that point. And then they realized what was happening, and they had their first divide. But then they reunited. And then the United States themselves have long divided themselves against the political ideologies. And to this day, technically, you could argue that they are still divided in these political ideologies, more so because Democrats, Republicans, that kind of stuff. But you can also argue that they are long united. But in a physical sense, about the Three Kingdoms, like something like the Three Kingdoms, a literal three divide, you can't really see any better examples than the Asian countries. Like North Vietnam and South Vietnam, that was the thing, and then the Vietnam War happened, and they were united again. To this day, they are technically united. And then we still have divided countries, like my own, like North Korea and South Korea, that kind of stuff. Those are some of the nations that are still divided to this day, and both sides always hope that we will go ahead and unite, but always in their own ideology, and that is one of the few reasons why we still haven't united. Albeit one can still hope, albeit I will probably not see the day the Koreas unite. Not a lot of people do. And it is within this divided world, I think we can go ahead and take our lessons from LUO GUANZHONG's The Romance of the Three Kingdoms. In here, we go ahead and find out about our themes are a bunch of loyalty. We go ahead, we have to be loyal to each other. We have to go ahead and we have to have this unification. We have to go ahead and have this war. But always after war, there's peace. You can't have peace without war. You can't have like a yin without a yang. You can't have light without a dark. You can have black without white, and so on and so on and so on. And of course, once you have these two extremes, there's a bunch of middle ground too. And this is the middle ground that we're talking about. Middle ground is where you get the unification. You can't have yes without no, and you can't have true without false, and you can't have 1 without 0. Or the other numbers too. And with this, you have to go ahead and realize that even if humanity really, really does suck sometimes, and when we are at our lowest points, we will always go ahead and get through somehow. We've always managed to somehow get through. And even if it took a few centuries, or maybe it takes a year, or maybe it takes a few decades, or a few centuries, or maybe even a few millennia, hopefully not a few millennia, we will always be able to reunite against some common cause. We are sick of war, we want peace, and we want to be able to cooperate. We love life, we don't want death. That kind of stuff. Now I'll give you my 3 cents on this. I believe that The Romance of the Three Kingdoms itself is just worthwhile a read. It's like on par with stuff like Don Quixote and The Odyssey. Even the abridged version is an incredibly great thing to read if you have no time to actually read the entire translated text, because I'm pretty sure the real text itself has 1 million or so Chinese characters, and that translates to something like a few thousand pages of English, I believe. Because this book itself is 500 to 600 pages long. And you can't just say that you actually know the story just because you play the games, you watch the TVs, because most of those TV series actually neglect the last 15 chapters of the 120 chapters. Mostly because the last 15 chapters are very depressing. It's a bunch of melancholy tone, but it's an important part. The last 15 chapters might be the saddest part, but it's also the part where the three kingdoms get unified. None of the original people that started the book are fated to actually unite the kingdom. They are all fated to be usurped by some sort of random guy. He's not very random, but he seems to be a kind of random guy because he never appeared until like the last part of the book. And then he's the one who unites the entire country. After Han Dynasty, we have the Three Kingdoms period, and we have the Jin Dynasty. And before those, we have like the Ming and the Zhou, and then the other dynasties too. And all those, we learn reunification must happen if you have divide. If you're not divided, there's nothing to unify. But if you're unified, there's something to divide. You can't divide without something that's unified, and you can't unify without something to divide. Basically, it's just a classic yin and yang story, and it's the pinnacle of Chinese culture. It represents all aspects of what the Chinese people believed in, and still believe in today: loyalty, courage, family, work, and other stuff too. So even if you are not Chinese, and you should actually still apply these principles to your life. And what more fun way to go ahead and read a good book about it, or watch a TV series about it, or play a video game about it. And that is it. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of Han Jun Sean. Thank you so much for your time to read my 3 cents and watch them and criticize them. And I'll see you guys soon.